They gave me 72 hours to shut off a water well that's been flowing since 1889. This morning, they showed up with cops, caution tape, and a crew ready to pour concrete down the shaft. They're about to learn that some legacies don't go quietly. You ever had a place that just felt like more than a place, like it remembered everyone who came before you? That's what the well is for me. I grew up in this town. My folks moved away when I was a kid. Dad got a job in Denver, but every summer they'd ship me back to stay with my granddad. Whole summers spent in that old house, running barefoot through the dust, and every single morning started the same way. We'd go out to the well. It's not some fancy modern pump, you know. It's old stone, about shoulder high, with this beautiful wrought iron frame my great-granddad built around it back in the 1920s. The original mechanism was a hand pump, copper fittings and all, most of it's still there. Now there's an electric pump, sure, but the old wheel's still bolted to the frame. You touch it, and you're touching the same iron my family's touched for 100 years. Granddad used to say, "This water's older than you, older than me. It kept this land alive when the river failed us." He wasn't just telling stories. During the Dust Bowl, that artesian well kept dozens of families going. The town records show it. Neighbors lined up with buckets and barrels when the creeks dried up and the government trucks couldn't keep up. My great-granddad refused to charge for the water. That well was a gift from the land, he'd say. No man owns what the earth gives freely. When I was a teenager, Granddad taught me how to care for it, how to clean the stonework, check the flow rate, test the water. "You keep it running clear, Ethan," he'd say. "Someday, it'll be your turn to look after it." I never forgot that. But life took me other places. I got a degree in engineering, worked oil rigs for a few years, then moved into industrial design. Big cities, big projects, big stress. I made good money, but it wore me down. After Granddad passed 5 years ago, the house sat empty. Mom didn't want to deal with it, my uncles were scattered. I kept telling myself I'd come fix it up one day. But the longer I stayed away, the more I felt like I was losing something I couldn't name. So about a year ago, I finally said the hell with it. Took a leave from my job, came back here. The place was a wreck, roof sagging, porch half gone, blackberry vines trying to swallow the barn. But the well, still flowing, still clear, sweet, cold as the mountain snowpack. I spent that first month just cleaning up. Fixed the roof, cut back the vines, replaced the porch boards. But every morning, first thing, I'd go to the well. Turn the wheel, hear that old pump hum to life, watch the water run. I'm telling you, there's nothing like it. It's not just water, it's history coming out of the ground. Then the neighbors started noticing. Folks walking their dogs would stop and ask about it. Some of them had heard the old stories. One guy told me his grandma used to fetch water here when she was a girl. I liked that. Made me feel like I was keeping something alive for the town, not just for me. Of course, not everyone felt the same. When Claire Remington moved in as HOA president, I barely noticed at first. She seemed like the type who wanted to organize bake sales and yoga classes, not my scene. But then she started sending out emails about modernizing the community's water infrastructure, about how private wells were unregulated sources of potential contamination. I figured, okay, she's worried about the newer houses. They run on the HOA's shared system, which is fine. I wasn't on that system. I didn't need to be. My property predates the HOA by about 80 years. My deed even references the well as an easement-protected resource. Legally, they couldn't touch it. At least that's what I thought. I didn't realize how far Claire was willing to go until the first letter showed up. HOA initiative to consolidate all water use under a single monitored system. For community safety, it said. Participation required. No exceptions. I wrote her back polite but firm. Explained the well's history, its legal status, its importance. I even attached copies of the original property records my granddad had saved. I thought that would be the end of it. Turns out, I was just getting started. I figured that letter would be the end of it. I really did. I mean, who was gonna fight me over a well that's been here longer than the whole damn neighborhood? A couple weeks went by and things seemed quiet. I kept working on the house, cleaned up the old barn, even started cataloging the water journal my granddad had kept all those years. It's this big leather-bound book where he logged every test, every repair, every story someone told him while filling their buckets. That book belongs in a museum, I swear. Anyway, one morning I walk out to check the flow rate like I always do. That's just habit now. And I see this bright orange tag taped to the pump housing. I'm talking the big waterproof kind they use for condemned buildings. Non-compliant water source. Pending enforcement action. I stood there reading it 3 times like an idiot. I thought maybe some prankster had slapped it on as a joke. But nope. Down at the bottom it said, issued by Willow Creek Estates HOA. Claire's name was right there in bold print. I took it off and marched straight back to the house, grabbed the phone, called her office number. No answer. Of course. So I sent her an email, short and to the point. I do not consent to any enforcement action. The well is protected by easement and legal precedent. Remove your violation notice immediately. 3 hours later, she responds, Mr. Cole, as per the HOA's new water safety initiative, all unregulated sources must be marked accordingly until they are either decommissioned or brought under HOA monitoring standards. I swear I could hear her smug tone through the screen. That same afternoon, HOA sent out a newsletter to every resident. Headline in bold, Unregulated private wells identified as community health risk. Underneath, a photo of my well? Yeah, they'd come onto my property without my consent, taken a picture and plastered it all over the damn neighborhood. They even included a little blurb. Residents should avoid contact with water from unregulated wells, and children should be discouraged from approaching such sites. I mean, Jesus. Just a week before, little Emma from down the street was here with her mom, filling a jug for her science project. Now I'm some kind of biohazard? That evening I had neighbors crossing the street to avoid me. One guy who used to wave every morning wouldn't even make eye contact. The kicker? Someone left a folded piece of paper in my mailbox, no name. You should just shut it down before things get worse. HOA always wins. I'd spent years working in corporate. I've seen plenty of power plays, but this was a whole new kind of petty. Still, I figured maybe Claire was bluffing, testing how much pushback she'd get. So I decided to document everything. Took photos of the tag, the newsletter, screenshots of her email, started keeping a timeline, just in case. Then came the cherry on top. 2 days later, I got an official violation notice taped to my door. HOA letterhead. Ongoing operation of a non-compliant water source in violation of community standards. Daily fines to commence in 72 hours if unaddressed. They'd even attached a voluntary compliance form for me to sign, basically agreeing to cap the well and connect to their system at my own expense. That's when I realized this wasn't some misunderstanding. Claire was serious. She wanted that well shut down, no matter what history or the law said. And me? I was starting to realize I'd picked the wrong month to stop drinking coffee. At first, I thought maybe they'd back off. I mean, I wasn't some crank hoarding rainwater in a bathtub. This was a legally protected artesian well. But if I've learned one thing about HOAs, it's this. Once they think they've got momentum, they don't stop. They double down. A couple days after that violation notice showed up on my door, I'm working in the shop, restoring an old brass pump valve, when I hear voices out front. Not the usual chatter of dog walkers. I step outside and there's Claire, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 guys in HOA vests and a sheriff's deputy I didn't recognize. Deputy Peterson, tall, young, looked like he still had that fresh out of academy smell, but he had a badge, and that was enough to complicate things. Claire gives me this tight little smile. Mr. Cole, just here to post the required public safety notice per our initiative. Officer Peterson is here to ensure everything remains cordial. Cordial, my ass. Before I can say a word, one of her guys slaps a giant laminated sign on my front fence. Bright red border, all caps. Potential contamination zone, do not enter without authorization. Peterson steps forward. Sir, I need you to understand. There have been multiple community complaints regarding unsafe water practices on this property. For now, this is a civil matter, but if you interfere with posted notices or removal operations, we may be forced to take further action. I stared at him. You serious? Based on what, exactly? He shifted a little, like he wasn't totally comfortable. I'm just here to ensure compliance with the public safety request. Any disputes? Take it up with your HOA. Which is rich, considering the HOA was the one fabricating the damn danger. Claire watched this whole exchange with that same smug smile, like she'd just checkmated me on the neighborhood chessboard. They left soon after, but the message was loud and clear. This wasn't just about fines anymore. They wanted me isolated, labeled, and boxed in. And it worked. Fast. That afternoon, I went to grab some groceries. The cashier at the local market, a woman who used to chat with me about old cars, suddenly acted like I had a second head. Heard about your water situation, she said, voice low. That's concerning. I asked her where she heard that. Oh, the HOA sent out a community safety bulletin. Said there might be bacterial contamination from old wells. That was the first I heard it was yours. Perfect. Claire had expanded her little campaign beyond our street. Now the whole damn town thought I was poisoning the neighborhood. Then the harassment really kicked in. Anonymous calls started coming in. Static-filled voicemails telling me to shut the damn thing down before the county got involved. Someone dumped a pile of dead leaves and trash around the well housing late one night, trying to make it look neglected. A city code inspector showed up unannounced for a routine inspection, clearly tipped off by someone at HOA. When I asked for the complaint that triggered it, he just shrugged. "Anonymous tip, sir." And through all of it, Officer Peterson kept showing up, always with a polite tone, always with that look that said I'm just doing my job, but always on Claire's side. One afternoon, he actually pulled into my driveway while I was testing the pump flow rate. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to have to ask you to stop operating this system until further notice." I straightened up. "On whose authority?" "Community Safety Directive. We've had increasing reports of potential exposure risks." I asked him flat out, had the county tested my water? Had any actual lab confirmed a single damn thing Claire was claiming? He didn't answer, just repeated the directive like a script. "If you continue to operate the system, you may be subject to further enforcement." That was the moment I knew I couldn't fight this alone. They were escalating, fast, and if I didn't get some hard evidence on my side, this wasn't going to stop at fines or signs. They were going to bury that well, figuratively or literally, and paint me as the crazy old guy clinging to some outdated death trap. And hell if I was going to let that happen. First thing I did after that little driveway showdown with Peterson, called my lawyer. Now, I'm no stranger to legalese, worked with enough corporate compliance teams to know when I'm getting railroaded, but I also know better than to fight a legal battle without backup, so I reached out to Rachel Bennett, local land use attorney, sharp as a tack, no patience for HOA nonsense. She came by the house 2 days later. We sat on the porch looking at the well while I laid it all out, the tags, the signs, the newsletters, the deputy breathing down my neck. After about 20 minutes, she shut her notebook and leaned back. "Ethan, this is a textbook harassment campaign, but the problem is they're framing it as a public health issue. That gives them cover with local law enforcement." I asked her what my options were. First, we need to hit this through proper channels. File a cease and desist to the HOA regarding false public statements. Second, submit a formal complaint to the sheriff's office about misuse of police resources. And third, we get your water tested. Independently. Certified laboratory. If it comes back clean, which I'm betting it will, we go public. That sounded like a plan I could live with. So that week, while Rachel drafted her letters, I drove 2 hours north to the state-certified lab she recommended. Took water samples myself, multiple draws, sealed, documented, the whole 9 yards. Paid out of pocket. If I was going to fight this, I wanted it airtight. Meanwhile, Rachel sent the cease and desist to Claire, citing legal precedent and the original easement protecting the well. Gave them 7 days to retract their statements or face civil action. And the complaint to the sheriff's office? I filed it in person, walked right into the station, documents in hand, asked to speak with the sheriff himself. Old school guy named Harris, knew my family by reputation. He listened polite enough, but I could tell he was wary. "Mr. Cole, I understand your concerns, but when we receive multiple complaints framed as potential health violations, we have to respond." I asked him straight out, "Did any county agency actually confirm there was a problem with my well?" He sighed. "Look, off the record, we haven't received any verified test results. Most of this is coming from the HOA's claims. But politically, it's tricky. No one wants to be the guy who ignored a contamination warning if something does happen." I nodded. I got it. CYA mode, cover your ass. He wasn't malicious, just didn't want the liability. Still, I told him point blank, "Until there's an official finding, I expect your deputies to stop acting like my property's under quarantine." He didn't give me a straight answer, but here's where things started turning. A couple days later, Rachel forwarded me Claire's official response. Pure corporate double-speak. The HOA denies any intentional defamation and maintains its right to promote community health and safety. Pending independent verification, all current notices will remain in place. Translation? We're not backing down, and good luck proving otherwise. That same afternoon, I caught Peterson parked across the street again, watching my place. Decided enough was enough, walked right up to his window. "Officer, unless you have a warrant or an official order, you've got no cause to be surveilling my property." He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Cole, I'm just here to maintain public order. A lot of concerned neighbors lately." "Yeah, concerned because your buddies keep feeding them bullshit." He didn't respond, just rolled up the window and drove off. That's when it hit me. The legal route alone wasn't gonna cut it. Claire had the narrative. The HOA controlled the information flow. Most of my neighbors already saw me as some stubborn crank refusing to play ball. But then 2 pieces of good news hit in the same week. First, the lab results came back. pristine. Zero contaminants. Mineral balance well within safe drinking standards. Bacterial counts below detectable thresholds. Basically, cleaner than half the town's tap water. Second, an unexpected ally reached out. Mrs. Jean Collins, mid-80s, been in this neighborhood since before the HOA even existed. Turns out her late husband had worked with my granddad maintaining the well. She still had old documents, photos, hell, even a framed certificate from the Historical Society recognizing the well's importance during the Depression. She came over with a box of them, sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking but eyes sharp as ever. "Ethan, your granddad would be ashamed if you let them take this lying down. This well belongs to the town's history, not just to you." And with that, I knew what I had to do next. We weren't just going to fight this quietly anymore. We were going to fight it where the whole damn county could see. I figured I had one shot left before this thing spiraled out of control. The lab results gave me leverage, sure, but I knew damn well Claire would find some way to spin it. That's how people like her operate. When facts don't fit the narrative, they just move the goalposts. I needed something stronger, ironclad, so I did what my granddad always told me to do when the world started making less sense. Go to the source. I spent that weekend in the old barn, digging through the mess of trunks and crates he'd left behind. Most folks would have called it junk, cracked ledgers, rolled up blueprints, stacks of yellowed newspaper clippings. But I knew better. My granddad documented everything. Every repair, every council meeting he attended, every damn transaction involving that well. It was late Sunday night when I found it, bottom of an old cedar chest, tucked inside a leather folio that smelled like pipe smoke and dust. A copy of the original land grant deed, 1919, signed and notarized. But that wasn't the prize. Clipped to the back was an easement agreement dated 1934, right in the thick of the Dust Bowl. Handwritten terms, clear as day. The artesian well located at Parcel 17A is hereby designated a community resource to be maintained in perpetuity by the Cole family. Any attempt to restrict access or decommission, the well shall void this agreement, returning control and full water rights to the landowner with compensation claims applicable against any party found to interfere. I sat there for a full 5 minutes, just reading it over and over. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just some symbolic recognition. This was a legally binding document, signed by county officials back when the town was scraping by for survival. And here's where it got real interesting. Stuffed behind the folio was an old county utilities map from the 1980s. Scribbled notes in the margin, in my granddad's handwriting, Claire Remington's father, involved in failed annexation bid, tried to privatize water rights. That name stopped me cold. I remembered now, vague stories from back when I was a kid. A big stink about some corporate suit trying to get control of the well and sell the water to a bottling company. The town fought it off. The guy left in disgrace. Claire wasn't just coming after my well for public safety. She was finishing her daddy's old fight. But the kicker came the next morning. Rachel called, excited. "Ethan, you're gonna want to hear this. We pulled the grant application for Claire's water project. Turns out, the HOA had applied for a state sustainability grant. Big money, upwards of $400,000. And in the application, right there in black and white, no existing protected water resources or historical wells are present within the project area. Flat out lie. If they'd disclosed the well and its easement, they never would have qualified. Rachel's voice dropped low. If we can prove this, it's grant fraud. That's criminal, not civil. We're talking potential charges. I just sat there grinning like a fool. After weeks of playing defense, I finally had them. And not just with some technicality, with the truth. But I wasn't gonna rush it. I called Jean Collins that afternoon, told her what I'd found. She just chuckled. "About time, Ethan. Your granddad would be damn proud." Then she said something that stuck with me. "Sometimes the past fights for you, if you let it." Well, the past was about to speak real loud. And Claire? She was about to find out this well wasn't just history, it was leverage. When I finally snapped that folder shut, I knew one thing for damn sure. I wasn't gonna win this by sitting around waiting for another violation notice. Claire was running this whole campaign on perception, public fear, manufactured urgency, the idea that if they just moved fast enough, no one would have time to ask questions. Well, that game works until the questions catch up. First thing I did was call Rachel, told her about the easement agreement, the grant application lie, the old utilities map, all of it. She was quiet for a second, then said, "Ethan, this is gold, but we have to be smart. If we move too fast, they'll claim you're retaliating. We need to control the narrative, shift them from offense to defense." Music to my ears. We mapped it out right then and there. Step 1. Get the easement officially certified and filed with the county recorder's office. No more, "Oh, we didn't know" excuses from the HOA. Rachel would handle that. Step 2. Contact the state grant office anonymously. Tip them to the false statements in Claire's application. Rachel had a contact there who could fast-track a review. Step 3. Hit the public square. And that meant one thing, the local paper. Now, I'm not a big media guy, never had social accounts, but I knew someone who did. Remember Jean Collins? Turns out her grandson Mike runs the biggest independent news blog in the county, real solid following. He'd already been sniffing around the HOA's project after hearing grumblings from other residents. Jean made the intro. I handed him everything, documents, photos, a copy of the easement, lab results, the grant app excerpt, the whole stack. Mike's eyes lit up. You realize if this holds up, it's a story that could bury their whole water project. That's the idea. He grinned. Then let's make sure it's airtight. We agreed. No sensationalism, just facts. Let the story tell itself. While Mike prepped the piece, I handled one more angle. Neighbors. See, most folks weren't evil, they were scared. Claire had framed this whole thing as protect the children versus grumpy loner with a dirty well. I needed to flip that. So I printed out copies of the lab report and a short letter explaining the well's history, its legal protections, and the truth about the water project. Took them door to door myself, one afternoon, one conversation at a time. Some slammed the door, sure, but a lot listened. A few even apologized. Had no idea it was like this, Ethan. Thought you were just being stubborn. I get it. That's how they wanted you to see it. By the end of that week, the tide was starting to turn. Rachel got the easement recorded. Mike had his article ready to drop. And the state grant office had opened an official inquiry, which meant the HOA couldn't move funds without scrutiny. The last piece? Timing. The HOA had scheduled an emergency community meeting for Saturday, where Claire planned to announce the next phase of the water project and formally pressure me to shut down the well. Perfect. Rachel and I decided that's when we'd go public. Mike would publish his article Friday night, so by Saturday morning, the whole damn room would already know what was coming. Rachel prepped a packet of documents for me to hand out at the meeting, copies of the easement, the lab report, and a polite but firm legal notice. Any attempt to interfere with the well will trigger immediate legal action and potential personal liability for participating board members. I wasn't gonna yell, I wasn't gonna threaten. I was gonna make it clear I had the law, the facts, and history on my side, and if Claire wanted to push this any further, well, she'd be the one facing the consequences this time. I'm not gonna lie. The night before that meeting, I barely slept. I kept running it all through my head. What if Claire tried to shut me down mid-speech? What if Peterson showed up in full cop mode? What if the neighbors just didn't care? But then I thought about my granddad, sitting on this porch, thumbing through that old journal, telling me, "Son, if you know you're right, stand your ground. Let the facts do the talking." So that's what I planned to do. Friday night, Mike dropped the article. HOA water project under fire, fraud allegations, and hidden history. The story was clean. No hype. Just the documents, the timeline, the lab results, the easement agreement, and yes, the little nugget about Claire's family history with the well. By Saturday morning, it had over 1,000 shares. Local news picked it up. Rachel texted me at 8 a.m. "Brace yourself, they can't ignore this now." The community center parking lot was packed, more cars than I'd ever seen at a HOA event. News vans out front, people milling around in little knots, some whispering, some glaring. I walked in with Rachel and Jean by my side. Peterson was there too, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Up front, Claire looked rattled, tight smile, too much makeup, flipping through her notes like a nervous teacher. The meeting started like any other, formal motions, budget approvals, yada yada. I could feel the tension in the room. Folks weren't there for that. Then Claire stood. "We've all seen the misleading articles circulating online," she began. "I want to assure you, the HOA's actions regarding unregulated wells are fully legal and intended solely for community safety." She launched into her usual spiel about bacteria, about state standards, about protecting our children. And then she said it. "In the coming weeks, with the board's approval, we intend to begin the decommissioning process for any remaining non-compliant wells, starting with the well located at 17A. That was my cue. I stood, calm, no yelling, no theatrics. "Madam President, if I may." Claire blinked. "You'll have your 3 minutes during community comments. Respectfully, this concerns a direct legal violation, and I believe the board needs to hear this now." I could see Rachel nodding slightly from her seat. Claire hesitated, but the room was already shifting. People wanted to hear it. She gave this tight nod. Proceed. I walked to the front, packet in hand. Good morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Ethan Cole. My family has maintained the artesian well at Parcel 17A since before most of this town existed. I held up the easement copy. This well is protected by a legally binding agreement recorded in 1934. Any attempt to restrict access or decommission it is a violation of both property law and state historical preservation statutes. Murmurs rippled through the room. I continued, steady. In addition, the well has been certified by independent lab analysis as fully compliant with modern drinking water standards. There is no contamination, no risk. I handed copies of the lab report to the board members. And finally, I said, voice a little harder now, the HOA's recent state grant application falsely claimed there were no protected historical water resources in the project area. That is a felony under state grant law. Now the room was buzzing, people whispering, phones coming out. Claire's face had gone pale. Rachel stood beside me then. Perfect timing. We have filed an official complaint with the state grant office, she said. An investigation is now open. Any board member who proceeds with decommissioning efforts after this notice may be held personally liable. And then, the kicker. Mike had just walked in, camera rolling. Live stream's up, he whispered. Claire tried to recover, but stammered about misinterpretations and complex legal matters. That's when Peterson stepped forward. Madam President, he said, voice steady. Given the potential legal implications now in play, I recommend the board suspend any enforcement actions until the investigation is complete. Claire froze. It was over. She knew it. We all knew it. I stepped back to my seat, heart pounding. Jean leaned over, smiling. Told you the past would fight for you. Damn right it would. I thought walking out of that meeting would feel like winning. But honestly, it felt like relief. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for weeks was finally starting to ease up. But we weren't done, not yet. Mike's article had exploded overnight. Local news picked it up, regional blogs too. By Monday morning, the county office was flooded with calls. The grant investigation was moving fast. Tuesday, I got a call from Rachel. State fraud investigator wants to talk to you. They're bringing in their own legal team. And here's the kicker, they've already flagged the HOA grant account. No more money moves. She paused. And the sheriff's office wants a copy of everything. They've been quietly gathering statements. Apparently, Claire wasn't entirely honest with them either. I felt a grin creeping in for the first time in weeks. By Friday, the whole town was buzzing. Claire tried to send out one last email blast, claiming the HOA had been targeted by malicious misinformation. But it was too late. The dam had broken. That afternoon, I was working in the shop when I saw two unmarked cars pull up in front of the HOA office. Not a full-blown raid, just quiet, deliberate. An hour later, Peterson showed up at my gate. He looked tired. Different. Mr. Cole, can I come in for a minute? I nodded, led him to the porch. We sat. He took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I didn't know the full picture. Claire, she wasn't being honest with any of us. The department's issuing a statement soon. And, he looked me square in the eye, for what it's worth, I won't be part of harassing you anymore. I nodded. Appreciate that, officer. He stood to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing. You might want to come down to the community center tomorrow. County prosecutor's making an announcement. I didn't ask, I just smiled. Saturday morning, the place was packed again, but this time, the mood was electric. Cameras everywhere, folks murmuring. Peterson was there too, not leaning against a wall this time, but standing next to two county deputies in full uniform. Claire came in late, pale, drawn, trying to hold her composure. Didn't work. The county prosecutor stepped up to the mic, calm, professional. After a brief review of the facts surrounding the Willow Creek Estates HOA water project, we have determined that material misrepresentations were made in the state grant application. In addition, evidence suggests a deliberate attempt to circumvent historical easement protections. He looked toward Claire. Therefore, effective immediately, Claire Remington is being taken into custody on charges of grant fraud and falsification of public records. Gasps around the room, phones snapping photos, a few stunned faces, but more nods. The deputies stepped forward. Claire didn't resist, just sat frozen as they read her rights and cuffed her right there in front of the whole damn community. As they led her out, her eyes met mine. No fire this time, just empty. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just stood there, steady, grounded. The past had fought for me, now the law was catching up. As the crowd started buzzing, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Peterson. Mr. Cole just wanted to say, "Good work and good luck." He extended a hand. I shook it. Sometimes the system gets it right, eventually. A couple weeks went by. Life in the neighborhood settled down. No more deputies showing up, no more anonymous notes, no more damn orange tags on my fence. Claire was out, obviously. The board called an emergency election, filled her spot with someone a little less ambitious. And me? I got my mornings back. First thing I did, cleaned up around the well, repainted the old pump housing, polished the wrought iron frame my great-granddad built. Gene's grandson Mike even offered to help, said it was the least he could do. One sunny Saturday, Gene came by with a small brass plaque she'd had made, for the community, for the future. Artesian Well, 1889, present. We mounted it on the stone. No ceremony, no speeches, just the two of us and the sound of water flowing, same as it always had. I still test it every week. Old habits die hard. And every time I turn that wheel, I think about my granddad's words. Some things you don't own, you just take care of them for the next person. Funny thing, folks have started stopping by again. Neighbors who wouldn't look at me a month ago now bring their kids to see the well, ask questions, take pictures. One woman even brought a bottle to fill, just like her grandmother used to. And Peterson? Ran into him at the market last week. He gave me a nod. Mr. Cole. Officer. Nothing more needed saying. So yeah, the fight's over. The well's still here. And me? I'm back to what I came here to do in the first place. Fixing things, one piece at a time. Because some legacies aren't meant to be shut off. Not by paperwork, not by politics, and sure as hell not by a clipboard and a smile.